You can wear a wig, even if my son doesn't want you to." Those were the exact words that slipped out of my mouth, and I swear to you, I have never seen my 14-year-old son so furious in his entire life. The look on his face, the way his voice shook with anger. It was like I had betrayed him in some unthinkable way. But let me back up a little, because this wasn't some random, out-of-nowhere comment. This moment was building for weeks, maybe even months, and I just didn't see it coming. I'm a 37-year-old mom, and I'll admit, I've never had to deal with something quite like this before. My son's girlfriend Nina is 13 years old, African American, and one of the sweetest girls I've ever met. She's not just polite, she's vibrant. Every time she used to come over, the whole house would light up with her energy. She laughed easily, she talked a lot, and she had this bubbly confidence that made her such a joy to be around. At first, I thought she was the perfect match for my son. They'd sit in the living room together, laughing over silly videos, or I'd hear them making plans for school events. It honestly warmed my heart, because as any mom knows, the teenage years can be rough. Seeing my son happy, and seeing him with someone who seemed to lift him up, made me feel like maybe, just maybe, he was on the right path, socially and emotionally. But then, something changed. It wasn't dramatic at first, just small things. Nina stopped talking as much when she came over. She wasn't as quick to laugh. Her bubbly confidence seemed to fade. And one day, I noticed she wasn't wearing her wig anymore. Now, for context, Nina used to wear this stylish wig that fit her so well. She'd switch it up sometimes, adding little accessories, pairing it with jewelry, and sometimes even putting on a bit of makeup to complete her look. It wasn't over the top, just the kind of thing a teenage girl might do to feel pretty. So when I noticed all of that was gone, no wig, no jewelry, no sparkle in her eyes, it stood out to me. At first, I brushed it off. Teenagers experiment with their looks all the time, right? Maybe she was just trying something new. Maybe she was tired of wearing a wig every day. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized this wasn't about style. This was about confidence, or rather, the sudden lack of it. She looked uncomfortable in her own skin, almost like she was trying to shrink into the background. It worried me a lot. I kept asking myself, what happened? Did someone say something to her? Did my son? Was it something at school? I didn't want to pry, because the last thing I wanted was to embarrass her or make her feel like I was judging her. Still, it gnawed at me. Here was this sweet, bright girl who had always radiated confidence, and now she looked like a shadow of herself. And honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling that my son had something to do with it. Then came the party, the day everything came to a head. I was supposed to drive both of them there. My son was still upstairs getting ready, but Nina was downstairs with me, waiting by the door. She looked so nervous, like she was dreading going to this party, and that's when I finally asked her what was wrong. She hesitated at first, but then she admitted quietly, "I don't feel pretty." And that's where it all began. The chain of events that led me to say the one sentence that blew up everything. But lately, something felt different. It started so subtly that I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Nina wasn't smiling as much when she came over. She didn't bounce into the room with the same excitement. Instead, she seemed quieter, more reserved, like she was carrying something heavy that nobody else could see. At first, I thought maybe she was just tired from school or going through a normal teenage mood swing. I mean, every parent knows that teenagers are like shifting clouds. You never quite know if you're going to get sunshine, rain, or a full-blown storm. So I brushed it off, but then I noticed something else. Her appearance had changed. The vibrant, stylish girl who once loved experimenting with wigs, playing with jewelry, and adding just a touch of makeup wasn't doing any of it anymore. Her wig was gone. Her jewelry was gone. The little details that once gave her confidence seemed to vanish one by one. At first, I told myself, okay, maybe she's just embracing her natural look. Maybe she wants to simplify things. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. But there was something in her eyes that told me this wasn't a choice she was celebrating. This was something she was struggling with. It was subtle, so subtle, that most people probably wouldn't even notice. But I did. I saw the way she avoided mirrors when she passed them. I saw how she would tug at her sleeves or adjust her shirt like she was trying to disappear. And worst of all, I saw how her laughter, once so free and unrestrained, was now guarded, almost forced, like she was afraid to draw too much attention to herself. It broke my heart, because this wasn't the Nina I knew. And the more I noticed, the more uneasy I felt. I kept asking myself questions I couldn't answer. Did someone say something mean to her at school? Was she being bullied? Was it something my son said? That thought, that my own son might have played a role in her sudden insecurity, kept nagging at me. I didn't want to believe it. My son isn't cruel. He can be thoughtless sometimes. Sure, he's 14 after all, but he's not the type to tear someone down. Still, the timing felt too connected. She started changing right around the time they began spending more time together. And once that thought planted itself in my mind, it wouldn't leave. Every time she came over, I paid closer attention. And every time, I saw the same thing. A young girl who used to shine so brightly now, trying to dim her own light. I felt torn. Should I say something? Should I ask her directly if she was okay? Or would that embarrass her even more? The last thing I wanted was to make her feel like she was being scrutinized. She was already fragile. I could see it in her body language. So, for weeks, I kept quiet. I told myself, maybe it was just a phase. Maybe she'd snap out of it. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew better. And then came the party. The day everything changed, I was supposed to drive both my son and Nina there. My son was upstairs, still getting ready, but Nina was waiting downstairs with me. And that's when I saw it. The look on her face that confirmed everything I had been suspecting. She wasn't excited. She wasn't nervous in a butterflies in my stomach way. No, she looked like someone heading into a situation they dreaded. Her shoulders slumped. Her eyes were downcast. She fiddled with her hands, twisting her fingers like she wanted to crawl out of her own skin. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about skipping a wig or jewelry. This was about her feeling uncomfortable in her own body. I couldn't stay silent anymore. So, I gently asked her, "Hey, are you okay? You don't look very excited about this party." And that's when she finally opened up. Hesitant, quiet, but honest. What she told me in that moment would flip everything upside down. Because it wasn't just a teenage phase. It wasn't just a style change. It was so much deeper, and it all came down to my son. That day, I was supposed to drive both my son and Nina to a party. It should have been just another normal Saturday. Pick them up, drop them off, and let them enjoy being kids. But instead, it turned into the moment when I realized just how fragile Nina's confidence had become. My son was still upstairs, taking his sweet time to get ready. That boy has never once left the house without standing in front of the mirror, fussing over his hair like he's about to step onto a red carpet. I figured I had a good 10 minutes before he came down, which left me alone in the living room with Nina, and that's when I noticed it. She was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone, but she wasn't scrolling, wasn't smiling, wasn't even pretending to look entertained. She just sat there, her shoulders hunched slightly, her eyes fixed but unfocused, as if she were lost in thought. Normally, Nina is the kind of girl who lights up a room, laughing, asking me questions, chatting about whatever funny things she and my son had been talking about. But that day, she was different. Her energy was heavy. The air felt different around her, like a balloon that had lost all its helium. I could practically see the weight pressing down on her, pulling her into herself. At first, I considered not saying anything. After all, I didn't want to pry. Teenagers are complicated. Sometimes they're quiet for no reason at all. But then, I looked closer, and I couldn't ignore it. The way her fingers fidgeted in her lap, the way her foot tapped nervously against the carpet, the way she kept glancing at the hallway, as if dreading my son's arrival. It all painted a picture I couldn't brush aside. Finally, I spoke. My voice was soft, careful, like I was afraid she might shatter if I pushed too hard. "Hey, are you okay? You don't look very excited about this party." For a moment, I thought she was going to shrug it off. Her eyes flickered up to mine, then quickly away, like she was debating whether to lie or tell the truth. It was the kind of hesitation you can only spot if you're really paying attention. And I was. I could almost hear the war inside her. Should I say something? Should I keep it to myself? Will she judge me? Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together nervously. And then, in the quietest voice, she whispered, "I don't feel pretty." Those 4 words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was only 13. 13. The age when kids should be worrying about homework, friendships, and what music they like. Not whether or not they're pretty enough to be accepted, but the way she said it. It wasn't a casual comment. It wasn't the kind of thing you throw out fishing for a compliment. No, her words carried weight, pain. It was the sound of a girl who had been battling that thought for a while now. My heart absolutely broke in that moment. I wanted to scoop her up, hug her, and tell her she was beautiful inside and out. But I also knew this was delicate. Teenage girls don't always want comfort. Sometimes they just want to be heard. So instead of rushing in with reassurance, I just paused. I let her words hang in the air. I let her know, with my silence and my expression, that I was listening. Inside, though, my thoughts were racing. Why doesn't she feel pretty? Did someone say something to her? Was it something at school? Was it something my son said? The questions tumbled over one another, and with each one, my worry deepened. This wasn't just about a wig or some makeup. This was something deeper. Something that had managed to steal the spark from a girl who had once been so full of confidence. And sitting there, watching her shrink into herself, I knew this was the moment everything would change. My heart broke. The way she whispered, "I don't feel pretty," had already gutted me. But when I asked her why she felt that way, the truth came spilling out in pieces that hurt even more. She explained almost apologetically that she was still getting used to showing her natural hair. That's when it all clicked for me. The missing wig wasn't just a style choice, and it wasn't some new teenage experiment. It was something far deeper, something tied to her confidence and self-image. She wasn't choosing to step into a new look proudly. She was struggling, caught in a place where what she wanted and what she thought others expected of her were pulling her in opposite directions. I could see it in her body language. The way she lowered her gaze as she spoke, her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. It was like she was confessing something shameful, but there was nothing shameful about it. She was just a young girl, navigating an incredibly personal, complicated part of her identity. So I asked gently, "If you feel uncomfortable showing your natural hair, then why are you doing it?" I expected maybe she'd say her parents encouraged her, or that she wanted to build confidence with it, or even that she was just experimenting. But her actual answer stunned me. Because your son thinks I look cooler this way. I froze. My son, my 14-year-old son, who still can't remember to put his dishes in the sink, was influencing how this sweet, beautiful girl presented herself to the world, and not in a harmless way, like convincing her to watch a new show or try a new snack. No, she was hiding her true feelings, burying her discomfort just to please him. It was like a punch to the chest, because instantly I was transported back to my own teenage years. I remembered being 13, 14, 15, changing the way I dressed because I thought a boy would like it, pretending to like bands I didn't actually care about, styling my hair in ways that weren't me, just because I thought it would catch someone's attention. I remembered the sting of trading pieces of myself for crumbs of approval, and now here was Nina, sitting in front of me, doing the exact same thing. I didn't want that for her, not at all. She deserved to feel beautiful on her own terms, not on someone else's. She deserved to have the freedom to choose what made her comfortable, whether that was wearing her natural hair proudly or putting on a wig that gave her confidence. So I took a breath, steadied my voice, and told her the truth. When I was your age, I used to do things just to make boys like me, I admitted. But honestly, that never made me happy. It just made me feel like I was pretending. You should do what makes you comfortable. If that means wearing a wig, even if my son doesn't want you to, then wear the wig. I expected her to brush it off, maybe even roll her eyes. But instead I saw it, the smallest flicker of relief on her face. For the first time that day, her lips curved into a tiny smile. It wasn't her usual big, bright grin, but it was something. And in that moment, I felt like I had done the right thing. I thought maybe she just needed to hear that it was okay to make choices for herself. Maybe she needed someone to remind her that she didn't have to bend and twist to make a boy happy. Not even my son. I truly believed I had helped her. I truly believed I had given her a little piece of her confidence back. But looking back now, oh, how wrong I was. A few days later, the storm hit. It started the way most teenage conflicts do, sudden, loud, and without any warning. I was in the living room, folding laundry, when I heard the heavy, deliberate thuds of my son's footsteps pounding down the stairs. At first, I thought he was just in a rush, maybe late for something or hungry, and headed for the kitchen. But the moment I saw his face, I knew this wasn't normal. His jaw was tight, his cheeks were flushed, and his eyes burned with a kind of fury I'd never seen from him before. He wasn't just irritated, he was livid. Before I could even open my mouth to greet him, he exploded. "Why would you tell Nina she can wear a wig if she wants to?" he shouted, his voice trembling with anger. The words hit me like a bucket of cold water. Of all the reasons I thought he might storm into the room, forgetting to charge his phone, losing a video game, or even something at school, this was the last thing I had expected. I set down the shirt I was folding and blinked at him, caught completely off guard. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Even though I already knew, he didn't hesitate. "You told her. You told Nina she could wear a wig. Why would you say that to her?" His voice cracked slightly on the last word. And I realized this wasn't just anger. It was something deeper. He wasn't just mad. He felt betrayed. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice calm, because she felt uncomfortable, sweetheart. I said gently. She told me she didn't feel pretty without it, and I wanted her to know she doesn't have to change for anyone. Not even you. For a split second, I thought that explanation might land. I thought he might stop, take a breath, and realized that I wasn't criticizing him. I was just trying to help a young girl who clearly needed reassurance. But instead, I watched as his anger doubled. His fists clenched at his sides. His chest heaved, and the redness in his face deepened. He took a step closer, his voice rising, sharp and trembling with emotion. "You don't get it. You just don't get it." The intensity in his tone startled me. He wasn't just arguing. He was desperate to make me understand something that clearly mattered to him more than I realized. I wanted to ask him why this was so important. I wanted to tell him that all I did was offer kindness. But the way he was looking at me, the fury, the betrayal, the disappointment, I could tell this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. Inside, my heart began to race. I knew teenage years were complicated, that everything felt heavier and more dramatic at that age. But I also knew that moments like this mattered. What I said next could either calm the storm or fuel it. So I sat very still, hands resting on the laundry pile, watching my son struggle with emotions that seemed far bigger than him. He looked like a volcano ready to erupt, and I was standing right at the base of it, bracing for the explosion. And when it came, it was louder than anything I could have imagined. His face turned crimson. His fists balled so tightly at his sides that I thought he might draw blood from his own palms. And then it came, words sharper than any knife. Words I never thought I'd hear from my own child. "You're a white woman. You don't get to tell a black girl how to look. That's not your place. You're being an overbearing mom. A Karen." The last word rang out like a slap across my face. Karen. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My ears buzzed, my chest tightened, and the room seemed to tilt. My own son, my baby, the boy I raised, the boy I'd stayed up with through fevers, through nightmares, through every small triumph and heartbreak, had just thrown that word at me. I stood frozen, laundry forgotten, staring at him as if he'd just turned into a stranger. He had never spoken to me like that before. Never. Not even during the worst of his teenage moods. I wanted to scream back, to defend myself, to say, "How dare you? I was only trying to help," but the words caught in my throat, because beneath the sting, beneath the humiliation, a flicker of doubt whispered in my ear. What if he's right? I replayed the moment with Nina in my mind. Her sad eyes, her quiet voice when she admitted she didn't feel pretty, and the relief that flickered across her face when I told her she could wear her wig if it made her comfortable. To me, it had felt like the kind and obvious thing to do, a motherly thing. But to him, to my son, it looked completely different. In his eyes, I wasn't just offering comfort. I was inserting myself into a conversation I didn't fully understand, touching on struggles I'd never lived through. He saw me as barging into territory shaped by race, culture, and identity, things that, as a white woman, I could never experience firsthand. And the worst part? He wasn't entirely wrong. I opened my mouth, searching for the right words, but nothing came. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. He glared at me, chest heaving, waiting for me to fight back. But I didn't. I couldn't, because, deep down, guilt was creeping in, wrapping itself around my ribs, whispering that maybe I had overstepped. The word Karen echoed in my head, not just as an insult, but as a symbol. It wasn't just about the wig. It wasn't even just about Nina. It was about what my son saw when he looked at me in that moment. A mother who didn't know when to step back. A woman who thought she was helping, but might have been making things worse. I wanted to explain myself, to tell him I wasn't trying to control her. I wasn't trying to speak over her. I just wanted her to know she had a choice. But even as I rehearsed those words silently, I could see how hollow they might sound to him. Intent didn't always erase impact, and so I stood there, caught between the certainty of my love and the possibility of my mistake, between my own perspective, where I had acted out of kindness, and his perspective, where I had crossed a line I couldn't see. The living room felt unbearably small. The weight of the conversation hung between us, heavy and suffocating. And, in that silence, guilt seeped in fully, sharp and undeniable. Because maybe, just maybe, my son was right. Maybe I had stepped into something I didn't fully grasp. Here's the truth. I am a white woman. That fact has never mattered much in the day-to-day rhythm of my life. But in this situation, it suddenly feels like a spotlight is shining directly on me. I don't know the struggles that Black girls and women face when it comes to hair. I've read articles. I've watched documentaries. I've seen conversations unfold online. I've even listened to friends talk about it in passing. But at the end of the day, I've never lived it. And that's what gnaws at me. No matter how much I want to empathize, no matter how much I want to stand beside Nina, there will always be a gap between my understanding and her reality. I can listen, I can read, I can try to educate myself, but I can never truly know what it feels like to be in her shoes. Now I can't stop replaying the moment in my head. Was I wrong to say anything at all? Should I have just stayed quiet, offered a smile, maybe a hug, and left it at that? When I think back, I can still hear how small her voice sounded that day. She admitted she didn't feel pretty. She confessed that she only stopped wearing her wig because she thought my son liked her better without it. That admission hit me hard. It wasn't just about hair. It was about self-worth. It was about a 13-year-old girl already shaping herself to please someone else. As a mother, that broke my heart. To me, it didn't matter if her hair was natural, braided, in a wig, straightened, or dyed purple with glitter. None of that mattered. What mattered was that she was uncomfortable in her own skin. What mattered was that she was letting someone else, someone her age, still figuring himself out, dictate how she should present herself to the world. That's why I stepped in. That's why I told her she should make choices based on what makes her feel confident, not on what a boy expects, not even if that boy happened to be my son. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like support, like I was giving her permission to choose herself first. I thought I was empowering her, but then my son exploded at me, and now I'm left second-guessing everything. Maybe he's right. Maybe my words weren't as harmless as I believed. Maybe my attempt to reassure Nina crossed into territory I didn't fully understand. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Telling a Black girl she can, or should, make a certain choice about her hair isn't the same as telling a white girl the same thing. There's a history there, a cultural weight, an emotional depth I will never fully grasp. For me, it was just reassurance. For her, it could have been something heavier, something more complicated than I realized. My words might have been well-intentioned, but intention doesn't erase impact. What if I added confusion instead of clarity? What if, in trying to help, I made things harder? And that's where the guilt creeps in. It sits heavy in my chest, whispering that I might have overstepped without even realizing it. That in my rush to protect Nina, I might have spoken out of turn. Did I truly empower her? Or did I unintentionally cross a line I didn't even know existed? Did I make her feel safe, seen, and supported? Or did I just make things worse by inserting myself into a conversation that wasn't fully mine to have? I don't know the answer, and the not knowing, that's what keeps me awake at night. I keep going back and forth in my head, replaying the same conversation from every possible angle. On one hand, Nina came to me, She opened up in a way that felt raw and unguarded. The way a young girl does, only when she feels safe. She admitted she was struggling. She admitted she didn't feel beautiful. She admitted she was changing herself to make someone else happy. And when a young girl admits something like that, how could I possibly stay silent? How could I, as an adult who has lived through my own teenage insecurities, just nod and say, nothing? That's what pushed me to speak. I wanted to empower her. I wanted her to know she has a voice, that her comfort and her happiness matter just as much as anyone else's. I wanted her to understand she doesn't need to shrink herself, change herself, or mold herself just to please anyone, not even my son. Because I've been there. I've been the girl who thought she had to change to be accepted. I know how heavy that burden feels, how quietly it chips away at your self-worth. And the thought of Nina carrying that at 13 years old, it broke me. But then there's the other side, the side that refuses to let me rest, the side that replays my son's angry words over and over, like thunder that won't fade. You don't get to tell a black girl how to look. That's not your place. And the thing is, as much as it hurt to hear him say that, he's not wrong about everything. He may only be 13, but sometimes kids see things with a clarity adults miss. Maybe I did step into something that wasn't mine to touch. Maybe, in my rush to comfort her, I oversimplified something that's deeply complicated. Because for me, telling her she could wear her wig was about freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to feel comfortable in her own skin. Freedom to reclaim her confidence. But for Nina, it might have been something much bigger. Something knotted up with identity, with culture, with history. All things I cannot pretend to understand fully. And so here I sit, stuck in this uncomfortable gray area. On one side, the voice that tells me I did the right thing. On the other, the voice that whispers, I may have overstepped without realizing it. Am I guilty of crossing a line? Or am I simply guilty of caring too much? Did I take something simple, her confiding in me, and make it heavier than it had to be? Or worse, did I take something that was already incredibly complex and flatten it down into something simple, stripping away its meaning without even realizing it? The truth is, I don't know. And that not knowing, that uncertainty, is what haunts me the most. It follows me into the quiet moments, gnawing at me, making me question every word I spoke to her. Because here's the one thing I do know for sure. My intentions were good. I wasn't trying to control her or dictate her choices. I was trying to support her, to make her feel seen, to give her permission to value herself first. But intentions don't always protect us from consequences. A good heart doesn't guarantee a good outcome. And I can't shake the fear that in trying to help, I might have made things harder for Nina instead of easier. And that possibility, the idea that I could have caused harm when all I wanted to do was help, that's what will stay with me. That's what I can't let go of. Now things feel awkward in my house. Not explosive, not loud, just heavy. It's the kind of silence that follows you from room to room, like a shadow you can't shake. My son is still upset with me, and though he's stopped slamming doors and muttering under his breath, I can tell the tension hasn't left. It sits between us at the dinner table. It lingers in the pauses when I ask him about his day, and it weighs down every conversation until it feels too heavy to carry. He avoids eye contact when I bring up Nina. His answers are clipped, short, final. It's fine. I don't know. Can we not talk about this? He doesn't have to yell anymore. His silence says everything. It's as if he's put up a wall between us, and no matter how much I tap on it, he won't let me in. And that hurts, because for 13 years, I've been his safe place. the person he always came to first. Now suddenly, I'm the enemy in his story. And Nina? Well, Nina's harder to read. I don't know if my words gave her a sense of confidence, or if I left her feeling even more conflicted than before. When I look at her, I see a brave face, polite smiles, soft laughter, small talk that feels practiced. But I can't help but wonder, is she wearing that smile like armor? Did I actually help her? Or did I say something that only added to her confusion? Part of me wants to reach out. I want to take her aside, look her in the eye, and tell her, hey, I hope you know my heart was in the right place. I wasn't trying to overstep. I was just trying to be there for you. I want her to know that my words came from love, not judgment. But another part of me hesitates, because what if asking her directly just reopens the wound? What if, in trying to fix it, I make it worse? What if I force her to relive a moment that was already hard enough to share the first time? That's the question that keeps circling in my mind like a storm I can't outrun. Am I the asshole here? Because if you strip everything else away, if you peel back the guilt, the doubt, and my son's anger, here's the truth. I wasn't trying to control Nina. I wasn't trying to disrespect her culture, her choices, or her autonomy. I wasn't trying to play savior or impose my worldview. I was just trying to support a young girl who looked like she needed it. That was it. That was all. But sometimes good intentions get tangled up in ways we don't expect. Sometimes the hand we extend to help is seen as interference. And as much as I want to stand by the fact that I was being compassionate, I can't ignore the anger in my son's voice when he told me I had no right, because maybe, just maybe, he was right. Maybe my advice, which I thought was simple encouragement, carried more weight than I realized. Maybe I stepped into a space I didn't belong in. Maybe, without meaning to, I turned Nina's vulnerability into a battlefield between my son and me. And that's what leaves me unsettled, because I don't know if I offered her comfort or if I accidentally crossed a line I can't take back. The worst part is, I may never know. The more I think about it, the more torn I feel. My thoughts twist around each other, pulling me in two directions until I don't know which way is right. On one hand, I was a mom in that moment, not just to my own son, but to a girl who trusted me enough to be vulnerable. And when a 13-year-old admits she doesn't feel pretty, when she whispers that she's changing herself just to make a boy happy, how could I stay silent? How could I not step in? Not remind her that her worth isn't tied to anyone else's opinion. If I had said nothing, I think that silence would have haunted me even more. Because what kind of adult lets a young girl believe she has to twist herself into someone else's idea of acceptable? What kind of mother just watches and says, well, that's not my problem? In that moment, I couldn't separate Nina from my son. She wasn't just a girl sitting in my living room. She was a child, on the cusp of adolescence, already carrying the heavy weight of self-doubt. And I responded in the only way I knew how. I tried to lift her up, but on the other hand, my son's words still echo like a warning bell in my ears. That's not your place. And the more I sit with those words, the more unsettling they become. Maybe he's right. Maybe it wasn't my place. Maybe I was so focused on being nurturing that I didn't stop to consider whether my perspective was incomplete. Because here's the truth. Nina's struggles might not just be about hair, or about boys, or about beauty. They might be about things I'll never fully grasp. Layers of history, culture, and identity that aren't mine to define. What if my attempt at encouragement wasn't what Nina needed? What if she didn't need me to speak, but instead needed me to listen, to sit quietly in her discomfort and let her know she was safe to feel it? What if she needed validation without direction, a hug without words, A moment where she could just exist without someone else trying to fix her. These questions keep me awake at night. I replay that conversation like a movie in my mind, pausing at different moments, asking myself what I could have done differently. Should I have asked her more questions instead of giving advice? Should I have turned the conversation back to her? Let her lead instead of stepping in with my perspective. And so, I keep asking myself the same question, over and over again. Did I do the right thing, or did I overstep? Was I just being a caring mum, offering advice to a teenager who seemed desperate for it? Or did I, without realizing it, cross a boundary I had no business crossing? The line between those two truths feels razor thin, and I can't seem to find which side I stand on. Some days, I convince myself I was right, that compassion is never wrong, that Nina needed to hear those words in that moment. Other days, I feel my son's disappointment like a weight on my chest, and I wonder if my good intentions caused more harm than silence ever would have. Because in the end, all I wanted was for Nina to feel beautiful. I wanted her to feel free to make her own choices, to know she didn't need to sacrifice herself for anyone, not even for my son. I wanted her to understand, deep down, that she was already enough. But maybe, just maybe, in trying to help, I only made everything more complicated. Maybe my words planted more doubt than reassurance. Maybe my effort to be the supportive mom turned into something messier than I ever intended. And that's the question I can't shake. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not ever.